Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. It begins at a private mining facility on the seafloor of the Atlantic Ocean. Geologist Stephen Beck and his team have 3 days left on their contract to extract as much silver as possible for some evil corporate suits. While outside terrorizing the local spider crabs, a driller named Tony has problems with his rebreather like only 2 minutes into this movie. His head almost implodes from decompression, but his comrades get him back inside the airlock and onto the shelter before that happens. Once he's recovered, the driller's Sixpack makes fun of Tony for almost imploding while spending most of his days creeping on the women. The 8-person crew consists of researcher Elizabeth, who doesn't give him the pleasure, and the driller Bridget, who stands up for herself but doesn't care if he looks. There's also 2 more miners, Cobb and Jones, as well as the onboard physician Dr. Thompson, who has a side plot struggle with the geologist for leadership of the crew, but nothing ever comes of it. Since they haven't got much left to do, everybody decides to push on through the night so that tomorrow they can take the day off. Liz gets to work repairing a diving suit that Sixpack planted a crab inside, so she gets him back by putting it inside his bunk. Beck gets told on a video call that he's to play nicely with the doctor or Miss Martin will have him replaced, when suddenly hearing a commotion from the other room. Since he started it and can't take it, Sixpack gets put on ocean duty as punishment and goes outside their vessel in a pressure suit for some routine drilling. It isn't long before he takes a tumble off a cliff and into a ravine filled with oversized tube worms, while the rest of the crew watch on the body cam. With his suit's self-contained oxygen levels depleting, Sixpack stumbles upon the sunken wreckage of a Russian ship called the Leviathan. When looking up the name on the computer, Bridget learns that it's still marked as an active ship on duty in the Baltic Sea, so they suspect it was doing something fishy. Mesmerized by the find, Sixpack doesn't respond to the radio and wanders into the ship, not noticing the giant skeletal remains of a sea creature nearby. He returns from the wreckage with a lockbox filled with various goodies, including records of deceased crew members and a video log. Thompson translates the Russian Leviathan captain, who describes his ship's infirmary as being filled to the brim with sick crew members. Presumed to have just a tropical infection, he says that there's something off about it as the door swings open and the tape suddenly ends. The miners also scan through the body cam footage and notice a hole ripped in the side of the Leviathan that looks like it was caused by the Russians' own torpedo. Thompson speculates about what would ever make somebody scuttle themselves like that, but Beck's a geologist who only really cares about rocks. Since these were Ruskies, there's also the obligatory bottle of vodka inside the crate, but being a controlled substance in their underwater base, the captain must dispose of it. That means just putting it inside a locker for the rest of the crew to find later and share it amongst themselves. They hide it inside a saline bag so that Beck doesn't poop on their parade, while Sixpack smuggles away a little flask of the stuff that he shares with Bridge. Elizabeth doesn't partake in the fun and instead goes for a jog around the facility until coming across Becky working on something. They have a moment when he admits that he only made Sixpack go on ocean duty for harassing her earlier, but honestly that's a pretty weak punishment. The following morning, the non-registered offender gets checked out by the doctor, who's unable to offer any explanation for the scales growing from his back. While Beck takes over the miner's job hauling the last few containers of silver, Dr. Thompson asks the computer for information about the rash. It responds that it's of unknown origins and has caused a genetic alteration in Sixpack, who dies after only 8 hours from first getting checked out. Despite the biggest tragedy still being when Jones destroyed Tony's puzzle, the Doc and Beck decide to hide news of the death to avoid panic among the crew. They check to make sure that it hasn't spread and to get Liz into her underwear, of course, when Tony suggests that maybe the scales mean that Sixpack is turning into a fish. Ignoring that, everyone passes their blood tests except for Bridget, who the doctor doesn't get time to see, and her clothes get to stay on. He takes a call with Beck and requests an emergency medical evacuation, but Miss Martin makes the excuse that we're yet to know if this thing is even contagious. She eventually relents but says there's a severe storm warning on the surface which will inconveniently delay the rescue for another 12 hours. That doesn't help Bridget, who's begun to feel the effects and gets taken to the medical ward, where Jones doesn't notice Sixpack is dead as he appears to be moving. When she's left alone, Bridget's hair begins falling out of her head before she notices that her serial creeper boyfriend is dead and beginning to mutate into a monster. Unable to handle the idea of going out the same way, she takes herself out and gets found completely naked, as these producers just couldn't help it. Her body gets taken to the sickbay, where once again nobody else notices Sixpack's corpse mutating into some giant creature in the other room. They inform the rest of the team about Bridge and the 12-hour wait period when hearing a crash from the medbay and finding her body missing. It has begun to morph with Sixpack into some kind of aquatic thing situation, so Beck and the Doc decide to dump both bodies without telling the crew. They almost reach the airlock with the body bag when Tony feels movement inside and tries to open it, thinking that somebody's still alive. We're 2/3 of the way through the movie before finally the creature is shown and claws at Cobb's chest, but they just flush it into the ocean like a big turd. However, as the airlock closes, one of the creature's limbs gets severed off and falls into the shelter, going unnoticed by these oblivious miners. We at least get some fan service of Williams breaking down in the shower so that you know these aren't some emotionally hardened colonial marines. During this time Sixpack's leg begins to grow a beautiful smile while Beck and the doctor look at footage from the Leviathan's medbay. They find some deformed human remains, so the doc speculates that the Russian scientists experimented on their own men to try create underwater super soldiers. He names our monster Homo aquaticus, and Beck finds the tainted vodka that everybody had been drinking from the night before. A mutagen was introduced into the Leviathan crew's nightcaps, but the cells made them turn into monsters, so the ship was scuttled to hide the evidence. Learning all of this, Elizabeth still thinks that now's a good time to go for a jog around the facility by herself with Sixpack's leg leech on the loose. Jones apologizes for the most devastating moment of Tony's life until now, when the toothy lamprey attacks him in the kitchen. Unwilling to help for completely understandable reasons, a terrified Jones seals the pair inside and rushes to get the rest of the crew. By the time they return, Homo aquaticus has used its super strength to escape, so the crew arm themselves with melee weapons and a standard issue mining flamethrower. Homie gets really large and grows toothy tentacles, one of which attacks Cobb, but Doc uses a saw to cut him free. When the group return to the medbay, they discover their blood bags empty, which is what Homeboy feeds on to survive and is why the one on the Leviathan died when the supply ran out. Beck and Jones decide to go hunting the creature with a tiny splattering of blood for bait, but it doesn't work and we don't actually see Homie for a while. Thompson and Liz take a look at Cobb's injuries, but they cause him to mutate, so the researcher runs away and abandons the doc. Once again it's understandable, as the infected miner's hand opens up into a mouth and presumably infects the doctor along with anything else that this thing touches. We just see him stumble over to the computers, and in his final act of self-autonomy Thompson ejects the escape pod so that nobody can spread the virus. He effectively dies a hero who prevents the mutagen from reaching the surface, but also just signed the remaining three's death warrants. Jones, Liz and don't call him Becky contact Miss Martin for the evacuation, but she tells them that they must wait another 2 days as a hurricane is overhead. She assures them they won't be forgotten, then hangs up and gets on the phone into a slow zoom out that makes me think we shouldn't trust this woman. The crew decide to check out weather reports from the surface, but their access to that part of the computer system is denied. You'd think financial reports from the company itself would be more restricted, but they learn that their expendable behinds have been declared dead as part of an accident. Due to all of the flailing about that Homo aquaticus has partaken in, it gives the crew exactly 10 convenient minutes to escape the facility. It's a self-destruct situation, so they attempt to prevent it by shutting off some valves or something, but come across Thompson hiding in the shadows. His face is just part of Homie's new flesh attire, so Beck and Jones retreat to Liz while scaring the creature away with the flamethrower. Giving up on that idea and trying to run away, Homeboy's tentacles burst from the floor, separating a trailing Liz from the others. She tries to climb across a gap but almost falls in, so Beck returns to help Butterfingers while Jones holds open a pretty heavy-looking door. Once saved, Liz doesn't even help Beck when he almost gets the six-pack treatment from behind, but luckily he has long legs and uses a saw to slice off Homie's mouth. They all escape and reach their diving suits, where they decide to risk being lied to by Martin about the hurricane and ascend to the surface. Elizabeth's the only one who de-pants while the men are allowed to remain in theirs, but Homie suddenly rips its way through Beck's suit. Luckily he hadn't put it on yet, as we see Tony's head begging to be killed as Homo aquaticus over here doesn't finish off its victims. Beck reaches a suit on the elevator and there's a moment where he tries to fight off Homeboy with fire, but this place is going down and water just puts it out. Before the creature can reach him, the airlock crushes the head of some poor fish that was absorbed into this mess, and the miners manage to get away. They eject their suits to supposedly solve decompression sickness, but it's only to give us more leggy shots of Elizabeth before reaching the surface. The storm smashes them about, or it would do if they weren't lied to, and Jones floats around on his back like he might have just gotten the bends anyway. Unfortunately we'll never know, because suddenly sharks surround the trio but don't attack and just came to check out the legs. When the Coast Guard arrives, you would think that now's when we'll see Jones swim, but the creature surfaces and attacks him to prevent that. The brave hero holds it back, not like he has any choice in the matter, and somehow dies off screen, while only now does Beck pull out an explosive that would have been real handy earlier. Having been carrying this for the entire movie, he throws it inside the second Homeboy's fish head, as this is the Bridget and Sixpack combo package from earlier. The monster's blown to smithereens while Becky gets crane gamed out of the ocean, and the survivors of the maritime mutant mining mishap are taken aboard a nearby oil rig. Miss Martin waits around to greet the pair like a couple of old friends, so Beck punches her in the face and just walks on by. And the movie ends.